Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and creator of the Salesology prospecting method. I'm also known as the queen of cold calling. And today, my very special guest is Cole Strauss. He is the National Sales Manager at Igus Incorporated, and he leads the Texas region at Igus. He focuses on nurturing customer relationships and driving new business development through strategic leadership and industrial sales acumen. Cole's role involves guiding the sales force, negotiating high-value contracts, and ensuring that the mission of being the easiest company to deal with is realized with every customer interaction. And Cole just recently transitioned into the National Sales Manager role for Chainflex Cables. He's been in this new role for 14 days. Congratulations, Cole. And Cole has an engineering degree from Texas State University. He has an MBA from the University of Texas Permian Basin, and he lives in San Antonio, Texas, with his wife Kelsie, his son Beckett, and two dogs, Lady and Cleo. So welcome, Cole.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I am going to have to ask you about your mission of being the easiest company to deal with. But before I ask you that question, I do want to know the backstory. How did you get into sales? How did you end up at Igus?
Yes, ma'am. No, thanks for having me. So I went to Texas State, got my engineering degree. It was more of a manufacturing focused degree, but electrical concentration. And I was actually a manufacturing engineer right out of college, transitioned into a little bit more field engineering with a little bit of sales in that. And then when I came over to Igus, took on the full sales role. I realized really quick that, while I liked engineering, I liked the problem solving aspect. Sales came along with better hours and more money if you're good at it. So it was an easy transition for me, and the fact that I get to deal with engineers still, and I can still kind of speak that language to them, I think helps out there. And so been with Igus for just over 4.5 years now. Started out as a territory sales manager here in the South Texas region. Moved up to the regional manager position where I managed a team in Texas, and like you mentioned, freshly into the national sales manager role, focusing more on one of our specific product lines.
Okay. So I do have to ask you, and I'm really, really curious. When I introduced you and I was reading your bio, and you said that the mission is being the easiest company to deal with in every customer interaction. And I have a few questions about that. First of all, is that a company mission, or is that your mission?
Correct. That is a company mission for Igus. So that's something that we take, near and dear. Every salesperson, we have a very large sales force. So, that helps in the first place of being easy to deal with, is you don't have to worry about, okay, the person I'm talking to is 10 hours away or wherever it may be. So that's something that Igus in particular focuses on.
Well, that's really a wonderful and amazing thing to hear. And so give us your take. Why is that important, though?
I think it's extremely important that the customer can trust that you're going to be there when you need them. It's being easy to deal with, not only on the salesperson, but from customer service to inside sales to product management to everybody involved. So being easy to interact with the outside salespeople, but the outside salespeople also knowing that, hey, if I don't have an answer for you, I have somebody who can step in and get you the answer. And so it's really all about, I guess, an advisor to the customer more than a salesperson. So easy to work with in the sense that we're going to get you a solution. And if we don't have the right solution, I'm not going to try to force something on you. I can work towards, we don't fit in here, but I've seen another customer do something similar. So maybe check into this. So again, it's more focusing on that advising role than, I guess, your true, salesperson, if you want to call it that.
Okay. Well, this is so interesting to me, and I'm going to editorialize for a moment because it seems that there are a lot of companies that don't make it their mission to be easy to deal with. And I would imagine that's a hard thing to do, given that so few companies seem to do it. So how do you make that happen? How do you make Igus or any other company an easy company to deal with?
So it can be difficult at times, and I feel like maybe some companies don't do it because it is difficult. It's easier to just focus on your top customers, or a certain few, maybe have key accounts, things like that. What I guess how I approach it, because as a sales manager as well, it's about prioritizing. So I'd like to consider our territory managers as my customers to a certain degree, to where when they need something for their customers, they come to me for that support. And being easy to work with means that, hey, doesn't always mean that I'm going to have an answer for you right away and, right now and have the right answer, but it's, hey, you're on my list. I do have to prioritize certain things, but I'm acknowledging that you need something, and I'm going to get you an answer. So that's one thing I always preach to my team is be easy to work with. And when you say you're going to do something, do it. Those are my two big things just as an individual. So, and that, again, it sticks with the Igus mantra of be the easiest company to work with. I take that down to the level of, I want to be the easiest, manager to work with for my team as well.
Okay. So this is something, it's not just a mission for the company, it's a mission for you too, which helps the company execute its mission.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly. And it goes a long way too. I feel when you're supporting the people who are, in front of the customer every day, that, they know they have somebody they can rely on.
Okay. So I did want to ask you, we met on LinkedIn, and you had actually responded to a poll that I put out there where I was asking about plans to grow in 2025 and what are you going to do to grow sales revenue in 2025? And your answer was that you were planning to grow through strategic partnerships. And you had a very interesting take, I thought, on growing through strategic partnerships. So I'm wondering if you would be good enough to share that with us.
For sure. So one of the things about the partnerships too, and especially moving into the role that I'm now in, is it's a lot of people, when they hear strategic partnerships, they're automatically thinking external, right? And those are extremely important. So especially in our industry, we have, we do sell direct to the customer. We also sell through distribution channels and, catalog houses, things of that nature. And those partnerships are extremely important because they are touching a customer base and have a wider reach in some cases than we do. Because, while we have a certain product lines that we sell, this catalog house over here, we are just a very small portion of everything that they sell. So there's a need for the customer to go through them because they can order our part or parts and then a list of 10 other parts that we don't touch from this, from the catalog house or distributor, whoever it may be. On the internal side too, whenever you have the sales team that, from coming from that role, which is one thing that I, praise at Igus is typically the hiring is done internally in most cases. So anybody you're anybody you're asking for help has been in your shoes at one point or another. They've been the person and, the person in front of the customer every day. But it can get difficult at times, and they're being asked a lot of different things. So they're being asked to talk about this, to make sure, hey, at the end of your sales call, make sure to just introduce these other few things. And it's to strategic partnerships on the internal side can be just as important as to, hey, make sure I'm getting in front of not just outside sales, but inside sales. Because a lot of times, at least the way we're structured, our outside sales team may not touch something before it goes out the door as far as with a customer interaction. Sometimes it's the customer finding it online or calling in, and it's just inside sales. So those partnerships with people at our headquarters in Rhode Island to make sure that me as the outside salesperson, what can I give you to make your job easier, which ultimately it all cycles back to at some point, outside sales is going to get in front of them. So, it's a lot that I'm working on, especially earlier in this year. I was actually in Rhode Island last week doing some internal meetings just to get aligned on some of these things that maybe in the past outside sales and inside, maybe didn't always collaborate on. That's kind of what I'm trying to focus on in this role too.
Okay. So how do you facilitate that collaboration?
In a lot of cases, it's looking for people who will take ownership of, whether it's one division or one, a project, a campaign we want to run, things like that. And it's also, finding people on my team that are directly reporting to me that want to take ownership and show that next step up of, okay, right now I'm doing this. I can do a little bit more than what's being asked of me. And, I want to take that on as well. So it's a lot of, it's a lot of legwork at the beginning, to be honest. Having those meetings last week, I'm going to spend a lot of time in office this week doing lots of follow up from those meetings and making sure that we didn't do that for no reason. So it's a lot of legwork at the beginning, but my whole view on it is, while this role, the ultimate goal is to be customer facing, I feel that if I take care of the internal marketing and the internal facing side of the strategic partnerships, that the customer facing side will take care of itself, because the people are asking the right questions. They're finding the right prospects. They're getting in the doors that they need to get in, and they can bring me in when necessary.
Okay. So I actually want to switch gears a little bit, because one of the questions that I asked you in preparation for this interview, or I asked, what are some wins that you and your team have had in the past year? And I'm just going to read what you told me. You said we were able to, the biggest win was winning versus the competition and making the customer's life easier in the process. And then you said we were able to educate the customer on our solution versus what they had previously used. And even though we were higher on cost, we were able to sell on the value of our products and services. And so I think that's something that a lot of teams struggle with, especially these days when so many companies are so very cost conscious, and just kind of want to know, well, what's the bottom line, and your competitor is cheaper. So can you walk us through a little bit of your process and your philosophy and how that works?
For sure. So yeah, that's it can be a mindset shift in some organizations, because of course, as an outside salesperson, if you go to the lowest cost right off the bat, you're trying to give yourself the best advantage of how can I get the order? That's what you're trying to do. And the mindset shift comes with, okay, is it warranted in every single situation? And how can we get the customer to understand? And this example in particular that you mentioned, it's upfront, it's a bigger cost. And that's what a lot of purchasers or engineers is what they're, I don't want to say graded on, but what they see right off the bat is, okay, this is a higher cost. What we try to make them understand, though, is to show the lifetime cost. So yes, it is a higher cost right off the bat. However, you're having to replace parts A, B, and C on your current system every, let's call it 6 months. With mine, Once you put it in there, you're not going to have to touch it for 2 years. And we do a really good job. If it's our so cable carriers and flexible cables, we have a ton of online tools to where we can literally plug in our cables and cable carriers, and I can tell you down to the cycle count how long we say it's going to last. And if it does not last that long, then we own it. We will replace it. So that's where it's getting the customer to understand this is not just a one-time cost. This is a lifetime type of thing. And while that's an easier pitch, I guess, to a maintenance guy who is going to have to service the current machine every 6 months, and if you tell them you don't have to touch it for 2 years, they're like, okay, I'm done. Sign off. Sign me up. It's a more difficult conversation with, let's say, a purchasing contact, to where, again, that initial cost needs to be justified. And it is, in some cases, it's walking them through that lifetime cost or the return on investment in some cases, to where, if you can't afford downtime on a production line, what is your downtime cost per minute or per hour? And, again, your system pays for itself if you go down for 10 minutes in some cases, just as an example. So it's getting the mindset shift from let's go in at the lowest cost and try to compete to we got to make sure what we're competing with in the first place is apples to apples, and make sure that it's a system that the customer needs and wants, and it's gonna last as long as they need it to.
So what I think I heard was your approach, how the outside salespeople are handling that conversation. But what I'm curious about, because so many outside salespeople will default to I want to get the order, so I'm just going to go in with the lowest number I can go in with so I get the order. How do you change their mindset so they can so that outside salesperson can actually go and do what you just described?
That's an ongoing conversation that I've actually had some meetings today about. It's going to be a struggle in some scenarios, but it's getting them to understand that it's asking more of outside sales in the beginning, because you have to have those conversations, and some of them are difficult. But at the end of the day, we're working towards a goal of, with the company has to get to a certain level too. And some of these customers who have maybe been getting certain pricing for a long time, maybe we have that conversation with them and say, hey, listen, we've taken a look, whether it's volume based or relationship based, things of that nature, competition based. We take a look there, and I've offered too, and I did this in my regional sales manager role, and I plan to continue to do it in the national sales manager role. I tell my team that if you need somebody to be the bad guy, I will, again, I don't have to call on these customers every day. You do. And in most cases, and again, I've been in their shoes, in most cases, they're going to bat for their customer, and I cannot fault them for that. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a balancing out somewhere. So it's, I won't tell you I have an answer for how it needs to be done at this point. That's going to be a learning curve for me too over the next few weeks and months.
Okay. And I know you had mentioned to me before I hit record to start this interview that in your new role, you are going to be hiring. And this is a topic that comes up all the time when I'm speaking with sales leaders, clients. I hear how difficult it is to hire good people. So I'm wondering what is your process? How do you plan to go about hiring people and making them successful? Do you look for complete newbies to the industry, never sold before? Do you look for experienced people that are coming with a book of business? Like what is your plan?
Yeah, so I'll take a step back to the regional sales manager role, where it was completely hiring external. You're looking for new people that are not, most cases not familiar with Igus. And my big thing that I would always try to stick to is I focus on attitude a little bit more than I do maybe the experience or specific industrial experience in my case. I feel that if somebody has the right attitude and at least a baseline of I don't want to say mechanical background, but just basic mechanical skills, are pretty important for who we deal with on a day-to-day basis. But even if that's a little bit lacking, I feel like that's something that can be taught. Attitude that's just something that's inherent to somebody. So that's the bigger thing. If you can tell off the bat, okay, this person, they want to, again, I go back to be easy to work with and get things done when you say you're going to get them done. And I think that's a big part of just attitude in general. So in that sense, when you're hiring somebody external, that's what I would try to focus on. Now, in this role, it'll be more basically taking those territory managers who have performed and, hopefully putting them up to the next step of, okay, now you're going to be a regional specialist for this particular product line. And I don't have experience with that yet. I plan to grow the team here in the next, year or so. However, I do see, I want to focus on attitude, but you run into the situations when you hire internally of, if it's multiple people vying for the position, somebody's going to be left unhappy. So while it's not something anybody looks forward to, it's something that it's a reality. So it's making sure when you're going through that process that you're managing expectations as well. But again, I'd say the big focus there for me particularly is attitude. If I feel somebody can match what I want in an energy level and in a day-to-day grind basically.
So how do you screen for that? Because the two things she mentioned were the attitude and also, do you do what you say you're going to do? Now, do you do what you say you're going to do? You can kind of screen for that by giving them a task, or, do they follow up after the initial meeting, or ask them to do something and have it done by a certain, ask them when they can get it done, and then do they get it done by the time they say they're going to get it done. So there are certain ways you can screen for that. Attitude is much harder because, as a client once said to me about one of the salespeople he had hired, the best sales job that this guy ever did was convincing my client to hire him in the first place. So how do you screen for attitude?
And again, that's especially in our virtual world now too, where a lot of the interviews are done over Zoom, like we're doing it here, is that can be tough, and people can put on a show. I think a big portion of that is, you can't always expect everybody to be 100% straightforward from the get-go, like you just mentioned. Apparently, that's the sales job that person did, was convincing them they were the right person for the role, when it sounds like they probably weren't.
No.
So that's, that is tough. One thing that I like to do is, and it's touch and go at times, is to ask them for referrals, and not just work referrals, but personal referrals in some cases. And sometimes not even utilize those referrals, but just see if they have right off the bat, like I usually try to do it in an interview, not an email, is to see if they have that right away. They have those names in the back of their head, like, no, you could call this person right now and they would be 100%, they would know exactly who I am, what I'm about, and things like that. So that's one thing. And I try to, again, not give them time to prepare for it, but straight up ask, if is this a person that I could reach out to?
Okay. Well, I'm going to try that out. Okay. So thank you for that. And then I did also want to ask you, because in preparing for this interview, one of the questions I asked was, what drives you crazy about managing a sales team? And you had a very interesting answer, because you said what drives you crazy is also one of your strengths. because you said with an engineering background, troubleshooting is in my DNA. So could you share a little bit more about that and how you troubleshoot?
Yeah. So, I think my answer was one of the things that drives me crazy is that it's everybody's problems become your problems. When you go from, I'd say I started as a territory manager here. I went from having one territory worth of problems to 4 territories worth of problems overnight when I went into the regional manager role. And now in the national sales role, we have, in my division in particular, I think around 50 territory managers across the US. So theoretically, you could have 50 problems coming to you at once. But again, it's the engineering side of me. I think that is one of my strengths is, not just, it's never to panic. So when you are troubleshooting something, it's okay, let's look what we have in front of us and what happened in the past. I guess you have different sort of problems, but what happened in the past, it's in the past. We can look at that later. What can we take what's in front of us and where do we go? How do we get to a solution that works for the customer and for us? And in some cases, internally too, a solution that works for the territory manager and for me. Not just it's the internal side of that as well. The problems that you have to deal with there on some cases also. And one thing I try to do too, and I use the example of talking to my wife sometimes. It'll drive her crazy when she's trying to tell me about her day, and my mind is still in work mode, and she's telling me about whether it's something that happened at work or something like that, and I'm spitting out solutions to her as far as what she should do, and she has to remind me, I don't need solutions. I just want you to listen. And I'm like, okay, turn off that side. Just listen and, try to understand. And when you're dealing with, like I mentioned, 50 different salespeople and 50 different personalities in that case. So sometimes you need to try to work towards understanding too, who needs a solution just right away and who's just trying to talk through this and, wants me to understand, and, basically what level do they want me in at? And I get reminded, like I said, very often of that, with just evening conversations at dinner with my wife to make sure that, I'm listening when that's all you need of me.
Okay. Well, this has been such an interesting conversation, Cole. Will you put your hand over your heart and promise me you'll come back so we can keep talking?
Whenever you need me.
Okay, good. And if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn is the best place to get a hold of me.
Okay. And that's actually where Cole and I met. It's on LinkedIn. And so if you want to connect with Cole, first you finish listening to this podcast, but then Cole Strauss's LinkedIn profile is in the show notes. So as soon as you finish listening to the podcast, go to the show notes, click on the link, connect with Cole. And thank you all for listening to Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders with my very, very special guest, Cole Strauss. He is a national sales manager at Igus Incorporated. And if you have found value in listening to today's podcast, then please think about one sales leader, one business owner or sales manager, somebody that that you think might also find value in listening to this podcast. And please do share the link with them. And until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.